In Caracas, the city doesn't sleep. It listens. That was the first thing my father told me the night he disappeared. We were standing on the balcony of our apartment in La Pastora, the lights below flickering like a broken constellation. Somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle screamed through the streets. Somewhere closer, a dog barked once, then went quiet. "You hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" I said. He smiled without humor. "Exactly." That was the last calm moment I remember. 2 hours later, the phone rang. It wasn't a dramatic kidnapping, no masked men kicking in doors, no ransom call, just silence where my father should have been. By morning, everyone knew. In Caracas, news travels faster than bullets. "Your father crossed the wrong people," our neighbor whispered, not even bothering to lower her voice. The wrong people had a name: El Consorcio. They weren't just a cartel, they were infrastructure, money, guns, politicians, police commanders, neighborhoods that breathed because El Consorcio allowed them to. And my father had audited their books. That part no one liked to say out loud. 3 days later, I got the message. It wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. Come alone, midnight, Parque del Este, if you want answers. No signature, they didn't need one. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't call the police. In Caracas, you learn early what institutions can't protect you from. At 11:57 p.m., I stood under a dead street lamp near the park entrance, my hands shaking despite the heat. The city smelled like gasoline, sweat, and wet concrete. A black SUV rolled up silently. The window lowered. A man inside gestured once. I got in. The door locked with a sound that felt final. We drove, without music, without conversation, through streets that grew darker the farther we went, until even the city's noise felt distant. Finally, the car stopped. We were underground, a parking structure half finished, smelling of mold and oil. Another man waited there, younger, clean clothes, calm eyes. "Elena Morales," he said. "Your father was very precise." My stomach dropped. "Where is he?" I demanded. The man studied me for a long moment. "That depends," he said, "on whether you understand why he disappeared." I clenched my fists. "He was an accountant." The man smiled faintly. He was an obstacle. He handed me a folder. Inside were spreadsheets, offshore accounts, shell companies stacked like mirrors facing mirrors, numbers so large they stopped feeling real. "He found the leak," he said, and instead of fixing it, he started asking questions. I swallowed. "So you killed him?" The man shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We offered him a choice." My heart pounded. What choice? He could disappear, or he could let the city disappear around him. I stared at the papers, hands trembling. "And he chose?" I whispered. The man met my eyes. "He chose you." The lights flickered. A distant elevator hummed somewhere deep underground. "You have 48 hours, the man continued calmly. "Finish what your father started." "Or?" I asked. He closed the folder. "Or Caracas forgets your name. And in this city, that's worse than dying." The SUV door opened behind me. As I stepped back into the night air, one thought echoed louder than anything else. My father didn't disappear because he was afraid. He disappeared because he knew I'd be brave enough to walk into hell after him. And somewhere in this city, El Consorcio was waiting to see if I would. By the next morning, Caracas looked different. Not on the surface. The traffic was the same. Street vendors shouted prices over the roar of engines. Buses coughed black smoke into the air like always. But I was different. Once El Consorcio knows your name, the city tilts slightly. You start noticing who watches too long, who looks away too fast, which streets empty themselves when you step onto them. I went to my father's office first. It was a mistake. The building stood downtown, an old concrete block wedged between a bank and a government office. From the outside, it looked untouched. Inside, everything felt wrong. Too clean. His desk was empty. No papers, no photos, no pen he always clicked when he was thinking. Even the dust was gone, wiped away with care. Someone hadn't searched the office. They'd erased it. I was about to leave when I noticed the chair. It was slightly lower than usual. My father was obsessive about details. He always kept it at the same height. I crouched, fingers brushing the metal lever underneath. A click. The seat dropped suddenly and something slid out from inside the frame, clattering softly onto the floor. A flash drive. My heart started racing. I pocketed it and left immediately, resisting the urge to look over my shoulder every 3 seconds. I didn't go home. Instead, I went somewhere my father used to hate. A bar in Petare, loud and crowded, the kind of place where anonymity survives through noise. Music thumped so hard it rattled my ribs. Sweat and alcohol filled the air. I ordered rum I didn't want and sat in the darkest corner. That's when he found me. "You shouldn't be alone right now," a voice said. I looked up. He was maybe my age, early 30s, sharp eyes, relaxed posture that didn't match the tension in the room. "Do I know you?" I asked. "No," he said, "but your father did." My grip tightened around the glass. "You should leave," I said. He smiled faintly. "If I was here to hurt you, we wouldn't be talking." I studied him. "Who are you?" I asked. "Luis," he said, "and I help people clean up other people's messes." "That sounds like cartel talk," I replied. "It is," he said honestly, "just not theirs." He slid something across the table with 2 fingers, a folded piece of paper, an address, a time, tonight. "How did you find me?" I asked. He leaned closer, voice low enough to cut through the music. "Your father didn't trust banks," he said, "or phones, or promises. He trusted redundancy." My stomach tightened. "You're the leak," I said. He shook his head. "No, I'm the pressure." I didn't like that answer. "You don't have to come," he continued, "but if you don't, someone else will finish his work, and they won't care who gets crushed when the numbers move." "What do you want from me?" I asked. His eyes hardened just a little. "To see if you're willing to be remembered," he said. He stood, disappearing into the crowd as if he'd never been there. I stared at the paper, then at the flash drive in my pocket. That night, in a bar-out apartment with the lights off, I plugged it into my laptop. What I found wasn't just evidence. It was a map. Names layered on names, accounts feeding other accounts, politicians tied to police units tied to gangs, gangs back to El Consorcio. And woven through it all, hidden like a signature, my father's work. Annotations, cross-checks, warnings, and one file marked in red. "If you're reading this, I'm already gone." My hands shook as I opened it. A video started playing. My father looked straight into the camera. "Tia," he said softly, using the nickname from my childhood. "If you're seeing this, it means they decided I was more useful as an example." My throat tightened. I didn't disappear because I was afraid. I disappeared because someone needs to finish this, and I knew you wouldn't stop halfway. He paused. "El Consorcio doesn't kill people like me right away. They keep us, they study us, they break us slowly." My breath caught. I'm still alive, for now. The video ended. I sat there in the dark, heart pounding, understanding finally settling in. The invitation wasn't about answers. It was about succession. And somewhere in Caracas, my father was waiting to see if I would finish what he started, or disappear like he did. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face frozen on the screen. Not scared, not begging, just resolved, like he'd already accepted the shape of what was coming and decided to move anyway. By dawn, I had memorized the map on the flash drive. Not the numbers, the patterns. El Consorcio didn't operate like a single body. It breathed through smaller ones. Shell companies that fed construction projects that justified police presence that pushed people out, vacant blocks that became laundering machines. And at the center of one of those spirals was the address Luis had given me, an unfinished hospital on the edge of El Valle. Public project, private money, frozen budget. Perfect. I arrived just before sunset. The building loomed over the street like a promise no one believed in anymore. Exposed concrete, dark window frames. A banner still hung from the third floor, bleached by the sun. Salud para todos, opening soon. A lie old enough to feel cruel. I slipped inside through a side entrance. The air smelled of dust and damp cement. My footsteps echoed too loudly in the empty corridors. "Relax," Luis's voice said from behind me. "If they wanted you dead, you wouldn't have made it past the street." I turned sharply. He leaned against a pillar, hands visible, calm as ever. "You always talk like this is a negotiation," I said. "It isn't." He nodded. "True, it's a transfer." "Of what?" I asked. "Control, narrative, timing." He motioned for me to follow. We walked deeper into the building, past rooms meant to be operating theaters, offices that never held a single file. The deeper we went, the colder it felt. Finally, we stopped in front of a metal door reinforced with a keypad. Luis turned to me. "This is where it gets complicated, because once you see him, you can't pretend this is abstract anymore." My chest tightened. "You said he was alive," I said. "He is, but El Consorcio doesn't keep people like your father in chains. They keep them useful." The door opened. Inside, the room was lit by a single fluorescent strip. A table, 2 chairs, a laptop bolted to the surface, and my father. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes were sharp when they met mine. "Tia," he said quietly. I crossed the room in 3 steps and stopped myself just short of touching him. I didn't trust the space, or my hands. "I'm here," I said. "I know," he replied. "I've been watching." I pulled back, anger rising. "You let them do this." He shook his head. "No, I chose where to stand." Luis stayed near the door, silent. "They want you to finish the work," I said. "They told me." "Yes," my father said, "but not the way you think." He leaned forward. "El Consorcio doesn't care about money anymore. They care about stability, about controlling how things fall when they inevitably do." I frowned. "Do what?" "Collapse," he said. My breath caught. "They know the system is breaking," he continued. "Too many hands, too many leaks, too much pressure. They need someone to decide what gets exposed and what disappears quietly." I stared at him. "And that someone is me?" I asked. "No," he said gently. "It's us." Luis shifted slightly behind me. "Your father negotiated a delay," Luis said, "in exchange for a successor." My stomach dropped. "You trained her?" I asked my father. He met my eyes. "I raised you to notice patterns, to ask why things work the way they do. I just didn't expect the lesson to arrive like this." "You used me as leverage," I whispered. "I gave you a choice," he said firmly, "one I never had." I laughed bitterly. "What choice? Finish the work or disappear?" "No," he said. "Finish it your way, or let someone else decide how Caracas burns." The weight of the city pressed down on me. "What happens to you if I refuse?" I asked. He didn't answer. Luis did. "They won't kill him," he said. "They'll let him watch. That's worse." Silence filled the room. I looked at my father again. "Do you trust Luis?" I asked. He hesitated. Enough to know he's not loyal to them, but not enough to forget he's loyal to the outcome. Luis smiled thinly. "That's fair." I stepped back, mind racing. "So this is it? You want me to step into the middle of this city and decide what survives?" "Yes," my father said. "And if I do?" I asked. He leaned back slowly. "Then Caracas will remember your name, whether you want it to or not." I closed my eyes. For the first time, I understood the true cost. This wasn't about saving my father. It was about choosing what kind of violence would replace the old one. And somewhere above us, the city waited. Because in Caracas, decisions don't stay personal for long. By the time I left the hospital, night had fully settled over Caracas. The city didn't change when you carried a decision this heavy. That was the cruelest part. Cars still honked, music still spilled out of open windows. Somewhere, fireworks cracked like gunshots, and no one even flinched. Only I felt the weight. Luis drove. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the blur of streetlights sliding across the windshield. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said eventually. "Yes, I do," I replied. He glanced at me, then back to the road. "Most people think they do. That's how El Consorcio survives." I let out a short, humorless breath. "Then they don't know my father." Luis didn't answer. He dropped me near my apartment but didn't stop completely, just slowed enough for me to get out. "One thing," he said quietly. "Whatever you choose, don't try to be clean about it. Clean choices don't survive here." I shut the door without replying. I spent the night with the flash drive spread across my laptop screen, city noise seeping through the cracked window. I wasn't looking for the biggest numbers. I was looking for pressure points. People El Consorcio protected, not because they were loyal, but because they were fragile. Accounts tied together by fear rather than trust. Projects that would collapse if one name disappeared. By dawn, I had a list, not of enemies, of leverage. I sent one email. No signature, no explanation. Just documents, receipts, transfers, dates, and a final line. "This is a preview. The rest goes public in 72 hours. I didn't send it to El Consorcio. I sent it to everyone else. Journalists, foreign banks, NGOs, international auditors who'd been waiting years for something solid enough to grab onto. Then I made the second call. Luis answered on the first ring. "It's done," I said. There was a pause. "What did you do?" "I removed the middle," I replied. "No negotiations, no private exits." He exhaled slowly. "You understand what that means?" "Yes," I said. "They can't control the collapse anymore." "And your father?" he asked. "That's your part," I said. "You wanted an outcome. Get him out." Another pause. Then, "You just made yourself very memorable." "I know," I said. "That's the point." Caracas didn't explode. It shifted. That's how you know it was real. Banks froze accounts, pending review. Construction projects stalled overnight. Police units were reassigned, then quietly dissolved. Names started appearing in the news. Not the biggest ones, not at first, but enough. By the third day, El Consorcio stopped calling favors in. They started burning them. Luis brought my father home just before sunset. He looked exhausted, smaller somehow, but when he hugged me, it was tight, fierce. "You didn't follow my plan," he said. "No," I replied. "I finished it." He studied my face. "And what did it cost you?" I thought about the city, about the email, about the way people now looked at me when they recognized my name from a headline that didn't mention me directly, but didn't need to. "My anonymity," I said. He nodded slowly. "That's expensive here." A week later, I stood on the same balcony where my father once told me the city listens. This time, I heard it. The motorcycles, the arguments, The laughter, the distant sirens that never quite stopped. Caracas didn't forget my name, but it didn't need to love me either. El Consorcio still existed, just fractured, weaker, forced into the open. Luis disappeared. I expected that. My father left the country 2 days later. So did I. Some nights, I still wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen differently, if I'd negotiated, if I'd let them decide what stayed buried. But then I remembered what he told me in that underground room. In Caracas, the city doesn't sleep. It listens. And now, finally, it heard someone answer back.